how to present ourselves. We know how to use social media. We know how to go past social media and take it to $1 million business. Now let's talk about the future. Because right now, from our meditation this morning, we're trying to stay in the present moment. We're focused on what's happening right here and now, but we have to think about the future. And I'm very excited to introduce our next guest, our next speaker, Mary O'Hara Devereaux. She is the co-founder and CEO of Global Foresight, a think tank and strategic consulting firm. She's one of the world's leading futurists and author of Navigating the Badlands, a best-selling guide to thriving in a chaotic world. It is my great pleasure to introduce Mary O'Hara Devereaux.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm delighted to be here in the present, and what I'd like to do is to invite all of you to get into my Futures helicopter. I want to take you on a fast ride over some of the landmarks that I see in the future that I think is the context that we all will be working and living in, and hopefully interest you in trading up in how you're living, working, and leading today. So the first thing that I think is important when you think about the future is that the future's already here. It's not evenly distributed. And what's important about that is that someone, somewhere, is doing your future already. And that's very important when you think about if you're in a nonprofit and you're sort of thinking about innovation, how can I do this? Somewhere on this planet, there's probably somebody who's already started to do some of the innovation, and you can really learn from them. Like our friend who just went to South Africa and learned a lot that I'm sure she brought back to Los Angeles, which really made a huge difference in our own country. If you're in business, I can tell you today in the world that somebody somewhere is already beginning to eat your lunch. And they're probably in some village in some country that you've never even heard of or you can't spell. But they're hugely impacting in the kind of global economy that we have. So I want to give you kind of my big picture for how I look at the world and invite you to realize that we are here. We have just been through the Badlands. We're ready to get out of the Badlands. Things still look kind of bad and pretty challenging, but we're ready to get out. And the story is we're in a big historical cycle of disruptive innovation. We're always in a big historic cycle of disruptive innovation. It just depends on where we are. And what these are is that, and I went back and mapped these back to the 5th century BC, so this is a recurring pattern. It's not unusual where we are. It's no secret about what we have to do. It's no secret how we got here. And it's also no secret that we're going to get out of these and recreate and reinvent the world that we live in. But it takes all of us to work together to do that. So the story is, this one started in about 1950. You get innovations, then you get surges of innovations, like we did in this one with all the information and communication technologies. They put the economy through a structural shift. That happened at the end of the century. And what that means is that what drives the economy changes. And so what drove the economy before now was really people. And now people don't drive the economy anymore. It's investment, it's trade, it's technology. After we go through the structural economic shift, what happens next is that all the social systems fail. Because society, the economy changes, and like the business institutions were mismatched to the issues and needs of the time, so are the social institutions mismatched to the issues and needs of the time. So healthcare is failing. It was a system created for the acutely ill. It was never created for people who live to be 100 and 110. Education has failed because it's not what we need people to know. It's not so much what we need them to know. We need for them to be able to access information and put it together more innovatively. The criminal justice system has failed. If we really look at the people that we put away, it's just another way of us getting rid of people that we really don't want to have around us. So how we get out of the Badlands is really we need to have a lot of social innovation, and we need a different leader. The leaders that we've had thus far are mismatched to the issues and needs of the time, and the big deficit is the kind of big thinking, the vision, the compelling leadership that will not just take individually us to the next place we want to go, but the entire world to the next place we have to go. So that's the challenge that we're in, and what I want to do is to paint some of that context with you very quickly to give you kind of a sense of why it is so compelling and why it's not a question of, will the future resemble the past? That's answered. The future will not resemble the past, and it will impact every single person on the planet, including every single person here in this room. So first of all, let me just talk a little bit about the economy. Regardless of all forecasting the economy has become entertainment, so you have all sorts of people who say everything, but everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but not their own facts. It's actually quite easy to forecast the economy. My basic background is not economics. I do know how to do economic forecasting, and I'm usually about 95% right. So I want everyone to know, this is sort of a look out, because I want you to feel secure about the next 5 years or so. And this is the economic forecast for the US. I'll show you what the globe looks like. There's always drivers and brakes. The drivers have gotten stronger, the brakes now. And so we're getting some growth. It's slow growth. It's been kind of anemic growth. But if we look out, it's likely to be back. We are back to the historic average of usually where we are in the past 40 years, about 2.4, 2.5 annually. And so we've got 5 years ahead of us that it's your game to lose, whether you're in the nonprofit sector, the for-profit sector, if you work for a big company, if you have your own business. We're not likely to get another recession until 2017 or so, and it'll be just a cyclical recession, kind of the ordinary ones that we're pretty clever at living through. So I want to just give you that context, because so many people are holding back, or what's going to happen to the economy, or should I, take a risk and invest money or invest my time? Yes, this is an absolute magic moment. If you want to make any move, make your move in 2014. There may be some volatility, there'll be lots of hype, all kinds of people saying doomsday, but this is a great time. This is a gift to anybody who wants to really take themselves and their business or their nonprofit to the next level in the next 5 years. Next, let's just take a look really quickly. This is 2012 data. 2013 will be a little different at the end. India actually gets back on the chart. But here's the lineup for the leading largest real GDP economies. This year we're about 16 trillion, China's 9 trillion. Within the next 10 years, China will pass the United States as the world's largest economy. It's a dead forecast. It's on its way. And we can see for the first time, Brazil's been on the chart now a couple of years. And I always put California on the chart because our economy in California, where you live, we all work, is either the 7th, 8th, or 9th largest economy in the world. And so it's an absolutely fabulous environment to be in. Again, it's our game to lose from an economic standpoint. These are looking back in 2012, looking forward. These are the global outlook for all of the major regions of the world. You can get a sense of how things are moving up. You can see that the US is moving up. The Eurozone it got pretty low, so it is returning. So this is really, so it's not just California, it's not just the US, it's really the whole global economy. Well, it has the real opportunity to possibly double in the next 10 years. These are our big trading partners. The name of this conference is Tech, Talk, and Trade. So I want to get up there for you to take a look at as you think about the U.S. And sort of who do we trade with, how are we participating in this expanding global economy. You can see that it's really our two closest neighbors are still the most important trading partners for us. China is rising rapidly, and particularly a huge driver and supporter of the U.S. economy during the recession by all the high tech that they purchased. Much of that came from California. And these are the top state economies. Just again, to give you context, I think it's really important for women leaders to be conversant and fluent with what's happening with the economy, who's on first, who's on second, are people catching up, yes or no. So this just shows, again, California's been the leading economy for a long time. Texas certainly is coming up, likely will not pass us, but is getting close. And don't want to dwell on this, but you want to get this to flip? And then again, just to give you a sense of the LA Basin, which we're sort of in on the edges of it, the LA Basin would be the sixth largest country economy in the world. It lies between South Africa and the Netherlands. The Bay Area would be the 20th largest economy in the world. It lies between Switzerland and Poland. San Diego would be the 47th largest economy in the world. So when you really think about the economic power and the economic opportunity that's out there for all of us, just keep this in context and don't worry. So the one thing I do want to say, though, about our great state is California has a lot of work and education challenges. And when we talk about the kind of social innovation that we need, the biggest social innovation imperative for the United States and for California to overcome in the next 10 to 20 years, or we won't be successful, is education. We, the black hole of the knowledge economy that we're all in is that it polarizes. And what you need is, in order to participate in the economy that we've created in this historical cycle of disruptive innovation, and these are the skills that are required in every country around the world. This is a huge, very challenging list. And all you have to do is to walk through the pre-K through 12 classrooms and schools in California to see that we're not, except for a few, that we are way behind. And shame on us. Shame on us to have so much so many blessings, so many gifts economically, and yet we are not educating our children to participate in this economy. And that's something that can be affected in every community. The actual number of college-educated adults sort of in each cohort is actually going down. The boomers have a higher percentage of their generation with degrees than we have in Gen X and Gen Y. So we're really falling behind. California is the college-going rates of recent high school graduates in California are very low. We're down below New York's at the top. We're down below Minnesota, Georgia, Maryland, Indiana, Tennessee, Michigan, Wisconsin. So that's a very, when you talk about leading indicators, this is a very bad indicator for California. This is the national education attainment of California women and men, ages 25 and above, and it's a pattern that one of the things that's happening is that we now have fewer and fewer male people, going to college, and women, it's a huge gap. The percentage of graduates from K through 12, from baccalaureate degrees in the US, the crossover was 1970. So this is a long trend that women are becoming, which is great for us, on one hand, that we have done so well and congratulate ourselves, but men in our society are falling behind in terms of being educated and attaining the skills to really participate in the knowledge economy. And so that's a big question. And in California today, as we get to 2020, we will not produce enough graduates of skills and knowledge, community college, baccalaureate degrees, master's, PhD, to fill the jobs that we will create. And there is no way that we can close this gap between now and 2020. So we will be importing more and more workers into California in order to fill those jobs. And we don't see enough changes that we've made in the pipeline to date, and this is 6 years out, already behind, to even begin to close that gap. So shame on California, shame on us, shame on all our communities. So what I want to do now is just take you through some of the bigger trends that are the biggest trends that are actually shaping the economy and will shape the context and the opportunities within which we work. So the first one is, which is just incredible when you think about it, is that the contribution to GDP, the size of an economy, has now shifted from the advanced economies of the US, Japan, and Europe to the emerging markets. That's an incredible shift. And there's many wonderful benefits to that shift. And despite all the problems in the world, through this shift that's occurred over the past 20 or 25 years, we have actually cut the absolute in half, 50%, of people who are living on less than $2 to $5 a day. That's a tremendous result of this. This is sort of the story of it. The brown over here, this is just the BRIC economies. Brazil, Russia, India, and China since 1990 in comparison to the Eurozone, the US, and Japan. And they're still rising, so as you can see, that will continue to grow. China has, of course, been the most important. Can you tell me my future? I would, but I can't read Chinese. And so that's the story of China's rise is an incredible story. And China continually surprises us. And I've spent a lot of time in the past 20 years actually working in China, so I'm a China expert, and they always look like they're about to blow up or fall apart or break apart or do something, but they're not. They have an incredibly aligned leadership. They're very thoughtful, they're very smart. They've got a lot of issues, a huge country, lots of people, and they will continue to be successful. And they graduate by maybe 30, 40 times now more of their young people with degrees in science and technology than the US. So they are going to be the leaders in terms of just the capacity to generate innovations in the future. That will become very much a very big player, and that will be China. So this is just a look at, in 2025, the G20, the G7, the E7, the G7, the US, and the EU, just the relative size. I just want everybody to get this is the implications and consequences of this shift are exciting, they're very positive, but we are now in a competitive advantage in the US that's like none have ever faced before. And we don't want to get left behind. When you look at you go out to 2050, 2030, you can see again, we will still have a very large economy in contrast to others, but China will definitely have pulled ahead. But the real story is not just China. These across the globe are the 20 fastest growing emerging markets to watch between 2013 and 2017. And this just shows you it isn't all about China, it isn't all about India. It's really about, this has become an epidemic of economic growth that's touching almost every country in some way, shape, or form on the planet. And within that, what's so incredible is that really what's driving it is not the big cities, but it's the middle market cities. These countries all have urbanization strategies because you need urbanization in order to get economic growth. And it's about 450 cities in these emerging markets that are really driving and contributing this growth. This is China's urbanization strategy. You can see their clusters. They have designed this. They've invested in it. They build the cities. They grow the cities. They facilitate the movement of people into those cities. They build schools. They build hospitals. They build. One of the benefits of a totalitarian government is you can say, build it here, and they will. So there's an upside and a downside. But this is not random. This is strategic. And it's happening in many other emerging markets around the world. And what this will create between now and 2025 is we are going to create 1 billion new middle-class consumers around the globe in the next 10 years, and 90% of those will be in emerging markets. That is huge. It's just a phenomenal shift on the planet. And if we had time and we were in a briefing with executives like I do, I was just at Disney most of the week this week, as they look at how they're going to capture these 1 billion new middle-class consumers. We would really go in and look at what are the implications of this for you? What opportunities does this provide you? I think everyone needs to look at that. And the big question is, how will 1 billion new consumers change the global economic and consumer landscape? It will transform it. Trends will start in other countries. They will no longer all start in America. The American middle-class consumer has been the target market for all of the global economy, really for the past 100 years. So I'm going to give you quickly 4 laws of the future, and then just a couple other trends. So how do you think about the future? And I think this applies to all of us, whether it's our personal life or it's our nonprofit life that we live or it's our business that we run. And first of all, is that people tend to overestimate drivers in the short run and underestimate their long-term consequences. So we're always overreacting to things. People are overreacting. This is how they're overreacting to the economy. Everybody's still holding back because they aren't unable to understand really what the long-term trend is. That's why I showed you those long-term trends so you could feel secure. The internet is the biggest example of that. Everybody thought the internet was going to transform the economy, which it did, but the biggest transformation of the internet is the transformation of how we all communicate with each other and our social life. The second law of the future is if something is unsustainable in the long run, it will end. We all have things we're doing today that are not sustainable. They're not going to last. You're going to have strategy tragedy, but we hang on to them too long. So we waste our resources on things that we're doing in a fast-paced, dynamic, changing world. Strategy is going to decay even faster. So you want to ask yourself, what's unsustainable in the long run? What will end? Are we having shooting or? Am I supposed to do something? No, you're all good. Are we all right here? Okay. So I just ask you, what are you doing that really you should quit doing now and transfer your resources to something that's going to happen in the future that's going to be big for you? So if something's going to happen in the future, it's not going to start with a big bang. It has to start. It's going to start small. It's going to be in your peripheral vision. You need to you can't just look like this. You've got to look at this way and that way and think, oh my God, that's a really interesting thing. What if that was the biggest driver of what I was doing 4 years from now? Because there's something out there like that. I mean, the social media and the website, some of a couple of the speakers we talked to today about social media and online marketing, and people should have been struggling with that and getting on board, 5 years ago, and so many people now are just trying to still figure that out. There's lots of, so pay attention to weak signals. I'm just going to give you a few. Most knowledge workers in the world will be women by 2020. That's a big, big shift. Rise of the shared economy. We're beginning to see that people no longer need to own everything all by themselves. There's a lot more sharing going on, zip cars, housing. Very interesting. That will be a wave of the future. We all know LOL, BRB, OMG, NetSpeak. Everybody thinks young people are illiterate. They're not. It's, literacy, probably the disintermediation of language by technology, which happened with writing, by the way. That was the big disruptive innovation in the 5th century BC in what now is Iraq. Imagine what it was like to be when you weren't a human being and you couldn't write. Well, people will be saying, can you imagine what it was like when we didn't have, texting and, shorthand and all this stuff? So MakerBot 3D printing only costs $500. Now everybody's going to be printing their own cups and glasses and plates and clothes over the next 10 years. Just think how that will disrupt the consumer markets. Smart packaging that refrigerates. It's already there. Solar chargers that are built into clothing. Brain fitness. People go to the gym now. We go to the gym to exercise our bodies. They're already going to the gym in Japan to keep their brains active. With the huge aging of the population, we now know that the brain regenerates and can grow neurons, and we thought the brain was done growing when we were 13 to 15, just 20 years ago. Anyway, lots of things. And probably one of the biggest weak signals, which is has huge implications across many industries, because this is a global weak signal, is the phenomenal rise of one-person households. People are not choosing a traditional household life. And we could spend a lot of time talking about that. But if you look at one key indicator, and just whether you look in Japan, you look in Turkey, you look in the US, people are choosing to be single, and people are choosing to have one-person households. Don't let the short term cancel out the long term. Don't let what's happening today. Somebody said, I'm glad I'm fearless. That's my biggest thing. I'm fearless. Be fearless. Don't stop yourself. You all have ideas that you should walk out of here at lunchtime and get on your phone and go find some money and invest in it and do it. So I'm just going to go through real quickly a couple of trends, and then we'll wrap up. One is, which is phenomenal, this is the GDP, the rise of the emerging markets is the huge trend. This is one of three that's shaping the world. This one, from aging to healthy longevity. Demographics are king when they hit. They transform everything that's in their path. And we are just now beginning to feel the impacts of so many people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s living to be 100. I call it the Geyser Glacier. It's on my map. I wrote my book, Navigating the Badlands. When I was writing it, I realized no one read, so I made a map. so people don't have to read my book. Many people buy books, they do not read them. So I have a map, but call it the geyser glacier. You've met the geysers, they are us, it's the boomers. We react more and more like geysers every day. And a glacier, because we're going to melt away very slowly. This is a global phenomenon, healthy aging, living to be 100. Orange at the bottom are people in the US, Japan, and Europe. The blue in the middle are those ratty little emerging markets. They have extended their lives in one generation, which took us several. So most of the people 60 years and older, this is out to 2050, will be in emerging markets. Now that's phenomenal. When you think about what we as a human race have done and what we have been able to transform, we just need to get this together. I mean, we're not using this tremendous results of what we've been able to create. This is people aren't dying. Most of the people will be living in emerging markets, developed countries. That's most of the 9 billion comes from people not dying. This, again, it's a phenomenon. Women are living longer. This is the people over 100 in purple are women in the US, and blue are men. So the world will be filled. It's a very interesting. There will be a lot of single older women, because women over 50, even if they were married, if they get widowed or divorced, they don't get remarried. So marriage is becoming something that belongs to the first half of life, and being single and living in a different kind of lifestyle for women is becoming a different norm. So this is California. This goes to show you sort of the 65 plus. I'm just going to give you a little look at our own state real quick. Look at these boomers' age. Here we all are in the middle. You know, just that's a huge cohort just moving up. These are, people are not having their activities of daily living around the globe limited until age 75. You're not old now, or even the first part of being old now, until you're 85. So and so what we have is, basically we have a second middle age from 60 to 80. Now the good news is, if you had a midlife crisis earlier, you get to have another one. That's probably the most fun thing. By the time we get to 2025, we will, our midlife crisis, we won't even think about one in the 40s. That won't be midlife anymore. It will be between 55 and 60. So that's radically different view of your lifespan. These are just the numbers of women, female boomers in the population. Bay Area, Central Valley, Sacramento. I don't have LA, it's the same thing. It just shows the tremendous capacity and power that second middle-aged women have. And they are the first cohort of women who've really been so educated. This is a huge reservoir for leadership that we need to tap into. So the big question at 60 no longer is, when will I die, but who will I become? That's really the question. Not when will I die, but who will I become? Big shift. And so how will humans adapt to 25 more years of life? I've been given my high sign. I've got about 2 minutes. So I'm going to speed through. I just am going to pause on this for a moment, because this is about jobs. And I just want to really impress upon you that the whole work situation will be transformed over the next 10 to 15 years. We are not going to be creating enough jobs for all the people that are born, the way we've created them in the past. So if something's unsustainable in the long run, it will end. This is ended. We're shifting from people to technology, more automation, more smart machines, robots. We haven't even begun the application of robots into the workforce. There'll be more Velcro relationships. The idea of having a job will become passé. Everyone will have to be an entrepreneur. Velcro relationships, people will have multiple careers. Velcro, you'll attach tightly and strongly when you can, when the task needs to be completed, and you'll break apart with no damage. So I'm just going to flip to the end and say I've got some guiding principles and a couple other things, but we'll leave that for another time. But yeah, I do want you to leave with it is the end of work as we know it. And I think I'll just, I don't think I can get there that fast. But I think what I want to leave with is I'd really like you all to trade up. The future will not resemble the past. I hope if you walk out of here today that you take with you the notion that your world, my world, the US world, the California world, the global world is in transformation on every dimension. That's very frightening at some level. It's very exciting. The last time we had this big a disruptive cycle of innovation was in the Middle Ages. And what they had at the end of the Middle Ages, they had the plague and all sorts of nasty things happen, was they had a renaissance. I think we are in line to have a renaissance. All we lack is leadership, and a huge part of that leadership needs to come from women, boomer women, Gen X women, Gen Y women, Generation Z coming up. So trade up, help your other women, colleagues in other generations trade up. The world is ours to design and lead. Thank you.